Welcome back to the channel. Today we're covering a rapidly developing situation in the Middle East, one that global analysts warn could escalate into a major conflict involving the United States, Iran, and Israel. The signs of an imminent confrontation are growing, and tonight we're breaking down exactly what's happening and why the world is watching so closely.
And while the Trump administration pushes its global agenda abroad, we're looking ahead to tomorrow when nuclear talks with Iran are set to resume in Geneva.
Madeline Rivera is in Washington with all the details. Hi, Maddie.
Good morning, Carly and Todd. So this would be the second round of talks between the U.S. and Iran. The Trump administration has said diplomacy is their preferred option, an approach Iran has indicated they favor too, but there are major gaps between the two sides, particularly on the issue of uranium enrichment. The president saying on Friday Tehran can have no enrichment. The regime, though, has rejected U.S. demands to end that program entirely. Still, Iran's deputy foreign minister tells the BBC they are willing to make some nuclear compromises if the U.S. is willing to talk about lifting sanctions. President Trump has stressed the importance of making a deal, but last week he also did not reject the idea of regime change in the country. In the meantime, he's sending more firepower in the region, directing the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, from the Caribbean to the Middle East. If the U.S. takes action against Iran, Reuters reports it might not look like Operation Midnight Hammer in June, an essentially one-off attack on 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Reuters says per 2 U.S. officials, the U.S. military is preparing for the possibility of sustained weeks-long operations against Iran if President Donald Trump orders an attack in what could become a far more serious conflict than previously seen between the two countries. Over the weekend, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked about the possibility of an attack against Iran. Here's his response.
I'm not going to talk about attacks on Iran or anything of that nature because the president's made clear he prefers diplomacy and an outcome of negotiated settlement. Now, we're dealing with radical Shia clerics. Okay, we're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try.
The USS Gerald Ford could likely reach the Middle East as early as this weekend.
The United States has significantly increased its military presence across the Middle East. Multiple naval assets, air defense systems, and rapid response units have been repositioned in what officials describe as a deterrence posture, but one that could quickly shift into active combat operations if necessary. Washington's message is clear. It is prepared for a sustained confrontation if Iran crosses certain red lines, particularly regarding nuclear activity or attacks on U.S. or allied forces. Israel has raised its security readiness to the highest level. Emergency services, intelligence units, and the Home Front Command have been instructed to prepare for the possibility of a multi-front conflict. Israeli leadership believes Iran is approaching nuclear breakout capability, and officials are openly discussing the potential for a joint U.S.-Israeli strike should diplomacy fail. This marks one of the most serious escalations in years. Iran is signaling both defiance and diplomacy. Tehran has warned the United States of strong retaliation if attacked, while simultaneously drafting a counterproposal aimed at breaking the deadlock in nuclear negotiations.
The U.S. now has more military air power in the Middle East than at any time since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, that according to the Wall Street Journal. And with a second aircraft carrier on its way tonight, the White House appears prepared for the possibility of a weeks-long war with Iran if ongoing nuclear talks fall through. Here's Charlie D'Agata.
The Iranian Navy held joint exercises with Russian ships today, a show of force in the face of renewed threats of military action from President Trump, who has warned the regime it must curb its nuclear program.
They must make a deal, or if that doesn't happen, I maybe can understand. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But bad things will happen if it doesn't.
The president has sent an armada of naval ships to the Middle East, including 2 aircraft carriers and several destroyers armed with cruise missiles. Military planners have given the president a range of options, from airstrikes on regime targets to its ballistic missile stockpiles to going after what's left of Iran's nuclear facilities. Last June, the president said U.S. strikes completely destroyed 3 nuclear sites.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
The Trump administration believes Tehran still has hundreds of kilograms of enriched uranium and intends to build a nuclear weapon. Any strikes on Iran risk retaliation.
The Iranians still have a very substantial stock of short-range missiles.
They can fight back.
They can absolutely fight back, and they can fight back at the kinds of targets where there are significant American assets.
We're learning tonight that Iran sent a letter to the UN Secretary General saying if attacked, Iran will respond and, quote, all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region will be legitimate targets. Tony?
Charlie, thank you very much.
Iranian officials accuse the U.S. and Israel of provoking conflict through military deployments and regional strikes, and they insist that any attack will trigger a broad response across the region. Now, analysts say the combination of military movements, failed negotiations, and increasingly aggressive rhetoric has pushed the region closer to war than at any point in recent years. Former intelligence officials warned that a U.S.-Iran conflict could erupt with little warning. Meanwhile, regional militias aligned with Iran, including groups in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, are preparing for potential involvement. A conflict of this scale would have worldwide consequences. Oil prices could surge, shipping lanes could be disrupted, and the U.S. could find itself engaged in a multi-theater conflict lasting weeks or longer. This is a moment of extreme volatility, and the next few days will be critical. Thank you for watching. We'll continue monitoring this situation closely and bring you updates as they develop. Make sure to like this video, share it with others who need to stay informed, and subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Stay safe and stay aware. years.